Welcome to Portland TV. My name is Yasmin Haroub. Today I'm joined by Mr. Stanley Irungu, who is the head of plant operation and production in East Africa Portland Cement. We're here to tell our stories and our bigger plan. Welcome, Mr. Irungu.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you can give us in a nutshell the process of cement making.
Hello viewers. When it comes to the process of making cement, it's basically split into two. We have the clinkering department and we also have the finish grinding. East African Portland Cement is one of the factories that is learned and integrated process whereby clinkering and finish grinding is happening within the Nairobi region. When it comes to the clinkering department, we basically describe it into three forms. We have the inputs subjected to a conversion process and eventually now we get the output. In terms of the input for the clinkering department, basically limestone, we basically mine our limestone from the quarries. One is Root and Hamut, the other one at the Bisiri in Kajiado, and the other one along Mombasa Road. We also use what we call Kanka. Kanka is basically raw carbonate limestone, and it's also basically our source of silica. Then the other input is basically iron ore or mill steel that basically give us iron 3 oxide. Then the last input, as far as the clinkering department is concerned, is basically bauxite, which gives us aluminium 3 oxide. Once you have the inputs, then now they are subjected to the conversion process. In a nutshell, the conversion process is split into 5 sections. The first one is basically raw material preparation. The other one is size reduction that basically happens in the raw mill. Once size reduction happens, then we have material that's ready to be fed into the kiln. Now the kiln system is basically split into 3. We have the preheating zone, we have the kiln, and we have the cooler. The preheating zone is basically where you dry the material that you are feeding into the kiln. The main essence of drying the material is so that you can get rid of the inherent moisture. Once that happens, basically a process we describe as dehydration. We now go to the next one where you are doing decarbonation. At the preheater, basically the highest temperatures that we register is around 900. But by the time the gas is exiting the preheater, we have a temperatures of about 350 to 400 degrees centigrade. Then once the dehydration happens, that's basically the drying of the material. Now the next process is basically the decarbonation, whereby the limestone in the feed, which is basically calcium carbonate, is broken down into calcium oxide, which we call lime, and CO2, that's carbon dioxide. Then the carbon dioxide is basically emitted into the atmosphere. Then once you get this lime, that's now combined with the other inputs from the other 3 raw materials and becomes now the feed to the kiln. Basically what happens is that East African Portland Cement has the latest technology as far as the kiln is concerned. We basically call it pre-calciner kiln, meaning that over 90% of the decarbonation happens within the preheater. Once that happens, now you introduce this feed now to the kiln. Kiln is divided into zones depending on what reaction are taking place at the entrance of the kiln and also at the discharge. And immediately now from the kiln, now we consider the output. The output from the kiln is basically what we call clinker. Clinker is usually, by the time it's being discharged from the kiln, is actually at very high temperatures, and that cannot be handled. So what normally happens now, we go to the last stage of clinkering process, which is basically the cooler, where you're blowing in cold air from the atmosphere, basically a heat transfer so that you can cool the clinker that is coming from the kiln, and then you're also recovering the hot gases. Because during the heat transfer process, this cold air is heated at temperatures of above 1000 degrees centigrade, and given that the clinkering process is dynamic in nature, meaning that it's energy intensive, you recover part of these hot gases into the system so that at least you can use it to in heat recovery, and basically helps you in optimizing your energy.
So now you can tell us more about the kiln and how it operates, and when was the last replacement done?
This is basically to take you through the kiln shell replacement that we are undertaking. As you can see up there, that's the current status of the kiln. Between tire number 2 and tire number 3, that's basically towards the discharge of the kiln. That's where we have the kiln shell that is extensively deformed and worn out with some patches.
So the area that we anticipate to replace during this particular shutdown is between tire number 2 and tire number 3. In terms of the kiln, the new kiln shell that we will be installing, we have 4 portions here that adds up to about 16.5 meters of the length that we anticipate to replace for the burning zone. In terms of the pre-shutdown activities that have already been taken place, we have the support structure that has already been installed. We have the scaffolding and we have the support saddles that have already been done. The other area that we'll be working on is basically the guard gear that's supporting and reinforcing the Yama bolts. On my right, you can basically see the homosilo. That's basically where we normally store the feed to the kiln. And then we have the preheater that I explained. That's where mainly drying and the dehydration process takes place. In terms of the anticipated duration for the shutdown, we expect that we will be done within 45 days.
East African Portland cement kiln was installed back in the year 1996 by IHI Japan. It's basically a precalciner kiln, which means it's one of the latest technology that we have in the country. East African Portland kiln is basically about 54 meters in length, and the area that we are focusing on is what we call burning zone. The kiln is actually split into 5 zones, but the one that has been problematic and worn out, whose basically integrity has deteriorated, is about 16.5 meters of what we call the burning zone. In terms of the capacity, it has an installed capacity of 1680 metric tons of clinker per day, and basically it has been in operation since 1996. That means basically around 26 years.
Okay, during the shutdown, do you expect to have cement production going on?
Yes, we have a plan for that. As I mentioned, when we talk about cement making process, it basically split into 2. We have the crinkling department and we have the finished grinding department. The finished grinding department will be running without any interruption, but this time around we will not be running it using our own clinker. We are basically running it using purchased clinker. But what that means is that during this period of shutdown, our customers will not be affected and there will be consistent product availability for our customers.
Okay, what does this process of the kiln shutdown in terms of power reduction, what does it mean?
Basically, it means improved power consumption, because what has been happening is that there's what we call mean time between failures. Under the current deteriorated status of the kiln, we have been running with a number of start-stops, and basically that means that the energy consumption is very high. Then the other thing is that we have been running with the depressed output. But after the shutdown, as I have mentioned, we will register improved performance in terms of the output at the same power absorption. So the specific power consumption will improve because of the enhanced volume that we are able to generate from our kiln.
Okay, how long do you expect the kiln to run after replacement without having breakdowns which have been experienced over the years?
Yes, I would say a minimum of 30 years. But that does not mean that we will not be undertaking corrective maintenance on the kiln. We will be stopping on an annual basis so that we can be able to undertake both preventive and corrective maintenance. The best practice is that this kiln should be stopped twice in a year. After 6 months, we take a mini shutdown. Then after the 12th month, we stop for a longer shutdown, basically to do elaborate maintenance works. But in terms of the actual shell replacement, I see this kiln can give us another 30 years before demanding another set of kiln shell replacement.
You can give us an estimate of how many tons of clinker will be producing once the kiln starts running?
Yes, I would say from where we are, we anticipate that this kiln should be able to give us over 90% of the installed capacity.
Maybe you can just give us a figure roughly.
1,500 tons plus on a daily basis. Then, as I mentioned, we will be able to register improved kiln reliability. That means if, for instance, we are targeting a kiln reliability of over 90%, that means this kiln will be available for production for over 26 days in a month. So once you do the math, you're able to see how much you're able to produce in a manual basis. They have the 90% of installed capacity, which is basically in excess of 1,500 tons, and the kiln that will be able to run for over 26 days.
Okay, and in terms of cement production, how many bags of cement will be produced in metric tons of cement?
In terms of
Lovely.
cement production, of course, given that we also have a variety of products that we are making, but basically in terms of monthly cement production, we have a target of in excess of 70,000 metric tons per month.
Okay, thank you.